Hey everyone, I'm just chilling in the van on this fine afternoon in Monkey Mia, and I thought it'd be a really good time for me to film my next My Views on Diet video. Now this one's going to be about what the guidelines are that I follow as to how to eat, and I'll be sharing with you all the 10 things that I've been implementing around mealtime so that the food I eat can nourish and energize me rather than do the opposite of that. So before I start on my top 10 tips, I just want to mention that it's not actually in any particular order. Like, number 1 is not the most effective tip over number 10, it's just the way I've done it. So we'll start with number 1, and that one is don't eat when you're stressed out, because when you're really stressed, your body goes into fight or flight mode, and so your body's ready for action, ready to move and run away or fight or something like that. It's not ready to be digesting food. So if you're feeling really stressed, it's not a good idea to eat when you're in that state. For that reason, you're just not going to be able to digest it as well. So that leads me into number 2. Sometimes it does come up to mealtime, and I am stressed out. So in these cases where I'm stressed but I still want to be eating, what I do is, I do this actually all the time before every meal. It's great to do no matter how you're feeling, but especially when you're stressed. Is what I've been doing lately is I would take a minute or two before eating just to take some really deep breaths and to focus on and think about where my meal has came from, and what actually went into that meal for it to get to where it is, because it's a pretty big process. Like, there's a lot of manpower and a lot of effort goes into it. Your food just doesn't magically end up on its plate there. So I'll take a few deep breaths, think about that, and I'll also be thankful that I'm able to eat this really yummy, nourishing meal. I think that when you're feeling thankful about something and when you're in a state of gratitude, it's quite natural for us when we're in that state to feel at peace and happy with everything. So when we're in gratitude, you're not going to feel stressed out, and in that state your body is going to be ready to digest that food. Your body's going to be like, yeah, bring on this food, I want to turn you into some happy, healthy cells. So before each meal, it's a really great habit to get into, to remember to calm yourself down, take a few breaths, think about where your food comes from, and be thankful for it. It's helped me a lot, and yeah, I'm gonna continue practicing that and try and remember it for every single meal. So that leads me to number 3. Number 3 is to remember to chew your food as much as possible, because your mouth is where digestion starts. So if your food's in as much of a liquefied state as possible rather than a solid state, then obviously your stomach and the rest of your digestive system doesn't have anywhere near as much work to do if you just gobbled it all up without hardly chewing it. So yeah, good way to remember that is just say, remember to always drink your food. It's a bit exaggerated, but that's a quote that I remember that always helps me if I catch myself out, if I'm just kind of, eating really fast and forgetting to chew heaps. Just remember to drink your food. Tip number 4 is to try not to get distracted by things like the TV or being on your smartphone, things like that. Instead, focus all your attention on the whole process of eating. Focus on the sensations, such as the taste of the food, the textures and the smells, because when our attention is all on the all of our attention's on the process of eating, then our body's going to digest it a lot better, because where attention goes, energy flows. So it's going to be a lot better, a lot easier when our mind and body are both in it, rather than just our body and our minds floating off elsewhere. When all our attention is put on the process of eating, then all our energy will flow into that, and we're gonna feel much better after eating, because digestion's gonna work a lot smoother than if you're distracted by things. Number 5 is don't eat too much and don't eat too little either. This one sounds like it's really obvious, and it is obvious, but it's something that I fail to do all too often. I find still quite regularly, I find myself after a meal like, oh damn, I actually think I ate too much. So it can be really hard to do, but just I think it's good to always be mindful to not eat too much or too little, because for one, if you eat too little and you're still hungry after your meal, then I find that I'm so much more likely to want to keep eating, so I'm more likely to go and want snacks and dessert, and I'll maybe eat things that aren't quite as healthy for me as that meal, and I'll eat stuff that I shouldn't really be having at that time. And when you eat too much, then you just feel really sick, and that's obviously not good either. So try and make meals that are that you know is the right size for you, and if you're thinking that meal might be too much, you can always put it in the fridge and save it for another day. So yeah, number 5, don't eat too much and don't eat too little. Number 6 is to not eat just before going to bed. Personally, I like to leave about at least 2 hours of a gap after eating and before sleeping. I've found that if I do eat just before going to bed, I wake up the next morning feeling really groggy and tired, and I just don't even want to get out of bed. I think the reason for this is when we're sleeping, our body's supposed to be rebuilding itself. It's supposed to be, in a rested state. But when we've got all this food to digest, a lot of our body's resources and energy have to go towards digesting that food. So we're not going to wake up feeling good if we've just eaten a big meal before going to sleep. Number 7 is to aim for at least a 12-hour fasting window every night. So what that means is, say one night you finish eating at 7 a.m, finish eating at 7 p.m, then the next morning don't eat until 7 a.m. I like to give myself a decent break from eating every night, because I find that I feel a lot better that way in the morning. I feel lighter, I feel more ready to take on the tasks for the day, whereas when I just wake up and smash a massive breakfast, I feel pretty weighed down from that. And I think the reason for this is pretty much the same reason as number 6, is overnight when we're sleeping, and whenever we give our body a break from energy being spent on digestion, our body's going to be focused on recovering and rebuilding itself. So yeah, always aim for about a 12-hour fasting window every night if you can do that. Number 8 is to not eat if your body's not feeling hungry. So let's just say it's dinner time and you don't feel like eating, but everyone around you, your whole family's having dinner. Don't feel like you have to eat just because everyone else is. I think it's the wisest thing to do is listen to our bodies, because our body knows what's best for us, and if it's saying to us, sending signals to our brain saying we don't want to eat right now, then it's always going to be best to listen to that signal and just not eat. So don't always feel forced and pressured to eat breakfast, lunch and dinner every day. Like, sure, if you're hungry for each meal and you actually feel like it, go ahead, but if there's any time you come to a meal, if any time it's meal time and you don't actually feel like eating, listen to your body and just know that you don't have to have that meal. We can decide what we want to do, and just listen to the wisdom that's inside of us. Number 9 is it's always going to be best for us to consume our liquids before a meal rather than drinking during or after the meal. Personally, I like to wait at least 10 minutes after drinking something before I eat. Now, the reason for doing this is because when we're drinking a lot of liquid whilst eating or after, that liquid's going to dilute our stomach's enzymes, the enzymes that break down the food. So if we don't have the right amount of enzymes to break down the food, digestion's going to be impacted a lot. And if I drink whilst eating or after eating, it tends to make my stomach bloat, and I feel a bit icky after that. So 9 is to remember to not drink during or after your meal, and it's best to wait 10 minutes after drinking before you eat. Number 10 is to really pay close attention to your body and notice how you feel after each meal. By doing this, we'll eventually start to notice patterns. We'll begin to notice what's making us feel good and what's working for us, and what's starting to make us not feel good and what's not working for us. And once we have identified whatever isn't working for us, we can experiment and make changes. So, for example, I used to eat lots of lentils and black beans in my meals, but I started to notice that whenever I had meals with lentils or black beans in them, I would start to feel I'd become bloated and I'd get a bit of an upset stomach. So once I noticed that and I realized that pattern, then what I did was stop including those lentils and black beans, and I'd change them to, say, tofu. So in that way, when we notice how we feel and we check in with our bodies after each meal, we can become aware of what works for us and what doesn't. So now I'd just like to quickly recap the top 10 tips I just gave you all. Number 1 is to not eat when stressed. Number 2 is take time to breathe and be thankful for the food you're eating. Number 3 is to chew your food as much as possible. Number 4, focus on the sensations and don't get distracted by phones or TVs. Number 5 is don't eat too much and don't eat too little either. Number 6 is try not to eat just before bed and leave about 2 hours before going to sleep. Number 7 is aim to fast at least 12 hours every night. Number 8 is don't eat if you're not hungry. Number 9 is it's best to consume water or liquids before your meal rather than during and after. And number 10 is to notice how you feel after every meal. So I hope you all got something from this video, and I encourage you all to implement at least a few of these things in your daily life and just see how it makes you feel, because since I've implemented all of these things, my body's really been thanking me for it, and I'm going to continue to do these things. So thank you for listening, and goodbye.